my it's my honor to be able to present to this annual Congress of the Viktor Frankl Institute, and I'm grateful to the organizers for allowing me to contribute via a video presentation. My name is Shimon Cowen, and I'm the director of the Institute for Judaism and Civilization in Melbourne, Australia. And you see my email there for those who are interested to correspond further. I will show that again at the end of the presentation so that anybody who wishes to note it may do so. Now, I am the author also of a work on a book of translations, which of a book of translations of Frankl, which he published in early years, in the 40s, and primarily in the 1940s. Also translations from a very interesting work, which is called Gottsuche and Sinnfrage. It is a dialogue which was published, I think, first in the 60s. It came out, I'm sorry, maybe it was held in the 60s, and it was published in 2005. And it was a long dialogue in which Frankl discussed with Pinchas Lapide his basic religious outlook and how that impacted his logotherapy. So the book contains early essays, very important early essays of Viktor Frankl, which are translated into English for the first time, for the most part, plus a significant segment of that book in which Frankl discusses the relationship between theology and his psychotherapy, his logotherapy. So this book, as you can see, it's called The Rediscovery of the Human, Psychological Writings of Viktor Frankl on the Human in the Image of the Divine. And this is a book which is available both as in print and as an ebook on Amazon and on online booksellers. Now, the importance of Frankl is particularly great in our time. It is important because, as Frankl himself said, with regard to the dominant psychology of his time, that is to say in the 50s, the 60s, maybe even into the 70s, was the psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud. And this teaching, this psychology, is described in one of the essays which I translate in this book as a movement which actually, in fact, a religion which believed itself to be a science, a false religion which believed itself to be a science. In other words, Frankl was acutely aware of the ideological content and the societal impact of Freudian psychoanalysis, both within the practice of psychotherapy and upon society as a whole. He saw it as a contributor to what he called the pathology of the zeitgeist, of the spirit of the times. And it was not only a psychological practice, but also a cultural movement which ultimately eroded human freedom. As we know, Frankl described Freud's work as essentially pan-deterministic. It was a model of the human personality which saw a particular zone of human personality, the instinctual base, as all determining of human personality and human conduct. Now, Frankl's, of course, Frankl's great contribution is, of course, to reintroduce the meaning faculty, the noetic faculty, or the spiritual faculty, as a counterweight to the emotional and to the mental dimensions of personality, or which has paired the psychophysical organism in the human being. And it was the coexistence of the psychophysical dimensions with conscience which actually opens up the realm of freedom in the human being. The human being is free because the human being is not determined solely by emotive instinctual drives, nor by mental perceptions, but rather the human being has the choice to challenge these perceptions, to challenge these emotions from the standpoint of conscience, from the standpoint of meaning. And that is the source of human freedom. Human freedom arises because the human being has alternative paths before him or her. The path of impulse or mere perception, the path of conscience. And conscience is that which is able to review and ultimately to modify, to accept or reject or alter perceptions, impulses arising from the human being. That is one vital contribution of Frankl's work. And with that, he came to counter the dominant psychological trends in academic and professional practice, which denied that freedom. And so that is something which is of great relevance today, particularly in a time when it seems that we are also, in many ways, moving back in many areas of mainstream psychotherapy to models which are essentially deterministic, which say that emotion and perception determine whom the human being is, and that the human being can only find fulfillment and wellness by being allowed to act out those perceptions and emotions. Frankl's message is that the human being is not determined by these, and that equally or more valid within human personality is that domain of review, that realm of conscience, which is in a position to question, to challenge, and to alter mere perception and mere emotion. So that is one aspect, freedom. And of course, coupled with freedom is responsibility. Responsibility to act in accordance with conscience, in accordance with believed meaning. But there is another very important element in Frankl's work. And this is the element which I suppose the book, The Rediscovery of the Human, with the essays translated within it, seeks primarily to address. And that is the question of the content of that conscience. In other words, we all know that Frankl stressed the importance of meaning in the human psyche. The question is, however, does that mean any meaning? And Elizabeth Lucas, one of Frankl's primary students, disciples, if you like, is in the first rank, the first row of those who say, no, Frankl did not believe in the equal validity of any meaning. And she draws attention to the fact that there are ethical universals in Frankl's work. And the essays which I have translated in this book bring out Frankl's belief in what he calls ethical universals. Now, this question of ethical universals, of objective values, which become important for the integrality and wholeness of human health, mental health, and well-being, is a matter which is very important, because amongst those who seek to follow in the great footsteps of Viktor Frankl, there is, if you like, something of a difference and a divide between those who, if you like, interpret Frankl's work to say that meaning is good and any meaning is good, and those who, with Frankl, and particularly with the Frankl of the essays which I've translated in this work, say that the realm of meaning is not a variable realm. It is not a relativistic realm. It is a realm which is structured by universal values. So this book takes up that stream, that thread in Frankl's work. Now, I must say in all honesty, and I draw attention to this in the introduction to the book, that Frankl himself, that there is a tension in Frankl's own work. And this is seen in two versions of a very important essay that Frankl wrote, and it's called 10 Theses Concerning the Human, concerning the person. The original version of this work states that, and it's in the 10th, the ultimate thesis, that the ultimate discovery of the human being is the imitation of God. Now, that is a really quite an extraordinary statement, an astonishing statement in many ways. It is astonishing in the face of contemporary psychology. But that is exactly what Frankl wrote, and that concept is corroborated in a number of early essays, Time and Responsibility, and other works, pieces which I've translated in this work. That there is, if you like, an ultimate objective destination of human conscience, that human self-transcendence leads towards those moral universals, and that even the atheist or the agnostic who embarks upon self-transcendence has in fact placed himself on the trajectory leading to that ultimate point, leading to that ultimate resonance of the human conscience with divine values, with a divine template, with objective values. However, Frankl himself produced a second version later on of that same 10th thesis, in which he removed that concept, those words. The ultimate destination or the ultimate discovery of the human is the imitation of God, and he changed it. Not only did he change that, he also altered various other parts of the 10 theses to suggest that there is a relativity of meaning. And it went even further. He even goes so far as to say that suicide itself could be a meaningful act for a human being. And this is directly opposed to other statements in Frankl. So what I'm saying here is I'm not here certainly not to in any way, heaven forbid, to discredit Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a great human being and he produced great work. But there is a tension and an equivocation in his own work. And those who follow in his footsteps need to decide which of these two, if you like, tendencies in Frankl we are to follow. And I unequivocally embrace the early Frankl, the Frankl who is the Frankl who, writing in the 40s and then even later, even into the 50s and the 60s, saying, and as Elizabeth Lucas would bring out later, this is the Viktor Frankl who believes that there is an objective content to conscience. So whilst that may rattle certain positions in contemporary psychotherapy, it's nevertheless very, very important, because Frankl is because as I wish to present briefly now, Frankl is saying that human mental well-being and societal well-being, because he speaks about, if you like, collective pathologies, which enter also into individual consciousness. Frankl is saying that there can be that certain meaning sets can be pathological. They can be pathological on an individual scale, and they can be pathological on a societal scale. Now, what comes out further in these early essays of Frankl, and indeed that important dialogue which he had with Lapida in the 60s, is that Frankl acknowledges important influences in his own work. He describes, for example, a great theologian known as Rabbi Yehuda Löw, or as we are also known as the Maharal of Prague. in that essay he states, in that dialogue he says that Frankl says, in several places in my work, I refer to this Rabbi Yehuda Lev as a forerunner of my model of human personality. Now, what is the significance of that? What that does is that takes us back to fundamental texts, theological texts. And remember that Frankl has also spoken about the theological dimension as the all-inclusive dimension, because that tells us what the human being is, that the human being possesses a higher faculty, that the human being has a soul, and that this actually is, we don't have to make any bones about it. This, in fact, is a theological principle. It's a theological belief. But Frankl then goes on to talk about as we all know, the structure of human personality, the layers of human personality. He calls it a dimensional ontology of human personality. And this is very significant because these layers of personality are also related to a matrix of values, which I seek to unpack, if you like, in Frankl's work, with reference also to the theological sources of his own thinking. And therefore what we see is that this uncovers, if you like, what I would call a moral structure of human personality. Just as Freud on the one hand saw the human wellness in a total desublimation of instinctual impulse, Frankl is saying quite the opposite. Frankl is saying no. Frankl is saying that the emotional and the instinctual base of the human being requires an ordering and a structuring, which is in accordance with conscience and values. So, in a sense, wherever we look, the various departments of human personality, be they somatic, bodily, instinctual, be they mental, perceptual, psychological, or be they noetic, conscience-related, meaning-related, each of these connects with a matrix of values. And this is something which is extremely important for the reasons which I set out at the very beginning of this presentation, namely that psychology is not simply a treatment of the human being. Psychology is a model of the human being. It begins with a model of what the human being is, a normative conception of what the human being is, and therefore it is very important that we examine that normative conception, that model which psychology presents. And just as Frankl wrote about psychoanalysis, that it had taken control of Western culture and Western society to many extent, and in a detrimental way. We need to bear in mind also that there are ideological currents in mainstream mainstream psychology which have done exactly the same. This year is the 50th anniversary of a meeting of the American Psychiatric Association in 1973, which rewrote the structure of human nature. I won't go into details about it. I do not wish to become polemical, but that was a political upheaval, and it was an ideological upheaval within psychiatry itself, and we are feeling the consequences of it to this very day. And so, therefore, my purpose in this brief presentation is to draw attention to the fact that Frankl not only said that the human being possesses conscience, possesses a power of self-transcendence, and therefore has freedom and responsibility, but that Frankl also said something of great significance regarding the content of conscience, that all human self-transcendence, whether in its early stages in the person who deems him or herself an atheist or an agnostic, and whether in the religious person who has, if you like, developed a high level of self-transcendence, that all of this, that the trajectory of self-transcendence tends towards one terminus, one end goal, and that is, in Frankl's very own words, in his essay, 10 Theses Concerning a Person, it's the imitation of the divine. And what that means for us is that imitation of the divine, in fact, translates into an imitation of divine attributes. But what is that imitation of divine attributes? Ultimately, it translates further into concepts of norms of human conduct, how a person should live, how a person should behave, and that therefore this is the norm of human wellness, the norm of human health, the norm of societal health, is something which comes when which has to be informed by this matrix of ultimate values. So that in this book, I'm seeking to bring forward. I'm seeking to bring forward the Frankl who the Frankl who was who was not avowedly not a moral relativist, who was a person who believed that psychology must take its place within a realm of higher values, and that those ultimate values are that which constitute the healthy structuring of human personality. So I'd be very grateful I'm grateful, of course, as I mentioned, to the organizers of this conference who have invited me to participate. And I'd be more than happy to correspond with any viewers of this presentation. You see my email at the bottom of the page. It's shimoncowen@gmail.com. I'd be delighted to share and to explain and to discuss further the points which have come out in this presentation. I believe that Viktor Frankl's work is of huge significance. I dare say his work is something which can actually heal our society, as well as healing our own unwell people amongst us. So thank you for viewing this, and please, I do hope that this will be the beginning of a discussion.